Garden has just released its annual list of the top 200 young South Africans making waves in their respective industries. And we're talking to 3 of them today ahead of Youth Day. First up, we have Phumzile van Dam, who's dialing in all the way from Cape Town, where she is the head of the DA's Parliamentary Communications. Next up, we have Maihlome Chweti. Maihlome is the spokesperson for Public Enterprises Minister Malusi Gigaba, and also, as of a month ago, the head of communications for that department. And to balance out all of that politics, we have joining us a very inspiring young doctor called Vuyani Mhlome. Now, Vuyani came from a very impoverished background, and he went on to graduate near the top of his class. He's very passionate about medicine, and he also happens to be something of a thespian, working in the film and theatre industry in his spare time. One of our readers, Ace Mgendeza, told us on Facebook that what is important for me is the time bomb that Vavi, i.e. Zwanzima Vavi, has warned us about youth unemployment. Now, we found that this was a concern that several of our readers were echoing ahead of this broadcast. Murolo Mponyani says the inability of youth to get employment is due to nepotism and politically motivated recruitment. Now, I know this is a bit of a hot issue. We have political people. Let's start with Maihlome. Maihlome, what is your response to that? And then you guys can just jump in and discuss it.
I do think the constricting factor is not necessarily nepotism or corruptions, which are problems, but I think it's the question of education that needs to be resolved, and all of us need to play our part in that. And one of the things we must understand and respect that in our context in South Africa, that everything does go through its own discussions, and it does go through multiple engagements. So it's fair for them to praise democracy at one point, but when things don't move fast enough on things they agree with, they say that, look, this is nepotism.
The type of education you have sort of influences whether or not you're able to get a job and what kind of job you eventually get. But I do kind of agree with the reader a little bit that it does have a little bit to do with nepotism, and I mean nepotism in terms of the relationship between the ruling party and COSATU, specifically with reference to the youth fare subsidy.
The problem is because we're trying to provide a service, or we're trying to equip young people with a whole lot, we often have lowered the standard of the education, and then the consequences of that, although we are educating our young people, we don't produce the quality graduates that would be able to go out there and be that workforce. I think what is important, something that we need to look at, is that at the end of the day, in order for our young people to become employed, they need to be, those qualified graduates. They need to be competent in the industry. Otherwise, we then open room for, for things like nepotism, where it becomes a matter of, who you know rather than what you can do.
An issue I'm quite interested in lately is, this is quite a departure from what we've been talking about, is initiation. Now, the reason being is that lots of young men, possibly hundreds, die every year because of botched traditional circumcisions. And there's been this huge pushback about talking about this issue. They're saying we don't talk about this issue, it is against our culture. Now, I wanted to talk to you guys as young leaders, young youth leaders. What do you think about that?
I definitely think we need to talk about it. I mean, I understand the tradition behind initiation. It's very secret, and women are not allowed in, and the boys that leave initiation, the men that leave initiation ceremonies are not allowed to speak about what happens. But I mean, 37, 38 young men have died. We can't just continue to keep quiet and hope it will go away. We need to find out what the reasons are why people are dying. So we do definitely need to have this discussion. There
are a large amount of people that go through the process very safely, and I'm sure that the good doctor would tell you too that what the problem is here is that you have people who are doing it irresponsibly. And I think it's unfair to then take the culture and start to question it and poke holes through it. And even have the sort of the invasion of it, which I think Mail and Guardian is doing to a certain extent, because it's not that we don't talk about it, it's that it is a culture which is restricted to certain corners. That's the way it functions, and that's the way it should continue functioning. And I agree with you that perhaps you should look at regulating, which I think they do to a certain extent in the Eastern Cape.
Personally, as a black Xhosa doctor who's been through the process, I think we have the responsibility, and I think that is why we were trained. I think we have the responsibility of creating that gap, or that bridge where we sit, because we understand, the biomedical or the Western component to it, we understand that the tradition is not being threatened, but lives here are being lost. And I think that to quantify these lives in terms of numbers, we actually don't see the true impact, of these deaths, through circumcision.
Firstly, culture can't only be discussed by the participants of a specific culture. Everyone should be able to have those discussions. And also, culture is not something that's static. Culture changes with time.
Absolutely.
It should change with time. If a culture is no longer working anymore, then we need to sit down and talk and see how we can fix things.